Well, today marks the beginning of several consecutive KGW weather impact alert days. Rod Hill is forecasting 100-degree temperatures today, tomorrow, and maybe even Sunday, too. More details on the longest, hottest heat wave of the summer coming up. Plus.
Well, first, they're clearly excited, as you've seen. So that's what they've got going for them, but we've got to temper that a little bit.
Yeah, this could also be the hottest hood to coast weekend ever. What race organizers are doing to keep runners safe. Then later.
If you're hiding these individuals, if you're aiding them in any way, I will prosecute you.
That is the warning from Multnomah County's DA as police continue to search for the suspects accused of killing a Gresham teenager while he was sleeping. And we also have an update on evacuation orders in Central Oregon because of a new wildfire burning in Jefferson County. KGW News at noon starts right now. We start today's News at Noon with a live look from the Hood to Coast relay course. The first wave of runners took off from Timberline up on Mount Hood at 2 o'clock this morning. All the teams will eventually make their way across the finish line in Seaside sometime tomorrow. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Drew Carney, and we want to get right over to Rod Hill in the Weather Center. So Rod, running Hood to Coast, I would say, is not the ideal way to beat today's heat. Just how hot do you think it's going to be later this afternoon?
Well, I haven't changed our numbers over the next couple of days. I still think 100 today, possibly. And if we don't do it today, I'll be really surprised if we don't get to at least 100 degrees tomorrow. So all heat alerts and warnings are now in effect, including the extreme heat warning from the Weather Service. Here at KGW, we have a heat impact alert up through Tuesday, with temperatures expected to be at least mid-90s or better through that period. And especially with the hottest weather today, tomorrow, maybe Sunday, heat exhaustion comes into play. And you can get that if you simply feel yourself overdoing it and you're not staying hydrated and you don't stop and take a break and take a rest. We heard the Hood to Coast organizers even telling their athletes that if you feel like you're succumbing to heat exhaustion, it's not worth it. Simply stop. Here are the temperatures at noon. Our state capitol building, 82 degrees at noon. And let's see what Portland has. We projected 85 at noon. We were close. It's 84 out there right now. And as I mentioned a moment ago, I do believe we have a good chance to get up to 100. Our hour-by-hour temperature march shows 93 at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 97. So here's the real hot stuff. Near 100, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, still 6 o'clock, and even potentially 97 degrees at 7 p.m. So our impact alert in red with the heat warnings up, potentially 100 degrees on the 4 or 5 o'clock hour this afternoon. I do want to show you one more graphic. This is one of our live cameras up at Timberline, where I think they're still sending waves of runners off. I wanted to check the temperature up there, 68 degrees. So that's still pretty comfortable, but by the time runners get down through government camp, they're finding temperatures well up into the 70s. That's your update for now.
All right, thank you, Rod. There's a lot more to cover here regarding the heat, but the next thing we want to cover is this new wildfire in Central Oregon, which grew significantly overnight from 500 acres to over 3,000 acres. It's the Flat Fire, burning 7 miles west of Culver and southwest of the Lake Billy Chinook area. So this is a live look right here at evacuation zones that officials just expanded about an hour ago. Dozens of homes in Jefferson County are under level 3 go now evacuation orders, and at least 150 more are under either level 1 or level 2 orders. As we mentioned at the start of the newscast, this could wind up being the hottest Hood to Coast weekend ever. The annual 200-mile relay race started this morning on Mount Hood. It continues through the day and overnight before the teams finally reach the finish line tomorrow in Seaside. So to deal with this afternoon's heat, there's ice and cooling towels for runners at exchange points during the hottest part of the day. Reporter Thomas Schultz is actually part of our KGW Hood to Coast team this year, but before he started his first leg, Thomas talked to one of the event's organizers about safety concerns for the runners.
Well, first, they're clearly excited, as you've seen. So that's what they've got going for them, but we got to temper that a little bit. Obviously, hydrate now. Don't wait until it's hot. Slow the pace. We've been telling people we'll wait. We'll be at the beach all day Saturday. Take your time. Have a great time. Talk to people while you're out on your leg. Make sure that they're doing well. If people are struggling, if you're feeling ill, stop. That's it.
Well, just over an hour ago, Multnomah County announced that it is opening up 2 cooling centers today and tomorrow. Those centers will be open between noon and 9 o'clock p.m. One of them is downtown, the other is in Gresham, and there's more information about the centers on the county's website. We also know the Central, Gresham, and Midland libraries will stay open longer today, and the main library in Beaverton is also extending its hours. All of these moves are made to give people a place to catch a break from the heat if they need it. Of course, we often think of seniors as being most vulnerable when it comes to heat-related illness, but local officials say it's really something we should all be aware of.
A lot of us maybe don't think of ourselves as vulnerable to heat, but in an event like this where it stays hot at night and where it lasts for days and days, that's when all of us can start to have real vulnerability to heat illness and even death.
So we want to take a look here at some of the warning signs of heat exhaustion. It's feeling faint, excessive sweating, nausea, and muscle cramps. Meanwhile, symptoms of heat stroke include headache, red hot skin, high body temperature, and a rapid pulse. Heat stroke can also be life-threatening, so if you experience these symptoms, you should definitely take them seriously. We also want to remind you to check in on your neighbors this week, and especially older people who live alone. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wants to remind people to wear life jackets if they're trying to stay cool in or on the water. Research from the Corps last year found that 91% of drowning victims were not wearing life jackets, and 87% of them were adults. They also want to point out that water temps can still be much colder this time of the year than air temperature.
If you're jumping into the water, you can expect kind of a cold shock is what it's known as. And a lot of times that will make you involuntarily breathe in. And so if you're not prepared for that, or if you don't have a life jacket on and you breathe that water in, you might start drowning. And if you don't have a life jacket, it's hard to recover from that.
The Oregon State Marine Board has several life jacket loaner stations. You can find out exactly where they are on the Marine Board's website. You can also find more information during this heat wave by texting the word heat to that number on your screen. It's 503-226-5088. We'll text you back with a link to a growing list of resources on KGW.com. In national news this afternoon, FBI agents staged an early morning raid at the Washington, D.C. area home of former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who went from Trump official to a critic of the president. Here's NBC's Gary Grumbach with the latest.
Hi there, good day. We know at this hour the home of former National Security Advisor John Bolton is being searched by the FBI along with his office in downtown Washington, D.C. John Bolton, as National Security Advisor back in 2018-2019, had access to some of the most highly sensitive documents that exist across the federal government. He wrote a book published in 2020 and republished in 2024 about his experience in that job, and it drew backlash because of what the Trump administration saw as a disclosure of classified information. Now, sources tell NBC News the probe is looking into classified documents that they say were potentially used in leaks to members of the news media. Sources also tell us this is related to an investigation that began during the Biden administration, but didn't go further at the time. Now, it's important to point out here, if he did retain any classified documents and he was aware of it, that is a federal crime. NBC News has reached out to John Bolton himself, and he has not responded to any requests for comment. Back to you.
All right, here's a look at some other national headlines this afternoon, starting with a new development in President Trump's law enforcement efforts in Washington, D.C. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered National Guard troops to start carrying their service weapons in the nation's capital. Almost 1,900 troops have been called in from multiple states to serve in a support role with D.C. police. A shooting prompted a lockdown at a hospital in Detroit. Police say just before 10 o'clock this morning, a man shot and killed his ex-wife in the basement of that hospital where she worked, and that man is still on the loose. Former Seattle Supersonics star Shawn Kemp will be sentenced today after pleading guilty to a shooting at a mall in Tacoma 2 years ago. Kemp admitted to firing his gun in the mall parking lot after tracking down 2 men who he thought broke into his truck and stole valuables, including his phone. Kemp pleaded guilty to second-degree assault back in May. Prosecutors are recommending a 9-month sentence. And Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell hinted that the Fed may cut interest rates soon, but didn't give a specific timeline. Powell said the economy faces risks from both inflation and slowing job growth. Markets are hoping for a September cut, while President Trump continues to put pressure for faster action on Powell. And that's a look at some of today's national headlines.